Welcome, everyone. We will get started momentarily. Thanks for joining. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reimagine Customer Engagement in the Age of AI. I'm Alex Gorel, your host for today's session, and I'm thrilled to have each of you joining us. Whether you're here to gain insights, expand your knowledge, or simply are curious about the subject matter, I'm confident you'll find today's discussion both engaging and informative. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we'll address them at the end of the session. We'll be sharing a special offer to all attendees, and you'll also receive a copy of the slides and access to the recording. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Jay Can, Chief Technology Officer and AI Expert from Synoptic. Laura Ramos, VP Principal Analyst from Forrester, and Tim Smith, Data and AI Global Black Belt from Microsoft. Throughout this session, we'll be exploring rising customer expectations, demands customer obsession, focus on digital engagement strategy, a crucial phase, and essential elements for a successful digital engagement framework. I invite Laura to get us started.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of Forrester, I really want to extend our appreciation to Synoptic and Microsoft for having me join today. Um, I'm going in this particular section. I guess the thing to start out with is to say, so if now is the time to reimagine customer engagement in the age of AI, what should you be thinking about in terms of your customers? It's really important to understand how they want to engage. And so to share some of the data that Forrester has been collecting about buyer behavior, I wanted to start out by showing just how complex B2B audiences have become and how their expectations have changed. We're seeing that they're much more like consumers in some of their behavior than they've ever been before. Um, as you look through the data, you'll see that the journeys have become more complex with more interaction types happening. But what's interesting is that self-guided digital interactions are now on par with in-person or over the phone kinds of things. So that's very interesting to see that they will be doing a lot of their own investigation digitally on their own. They're really into instant gratification now. 75% of marketers agree that buyers and customers expect an immediate response. And it's really important, finally, to be insights driven. That the buyers are expecting experiences that are personalized to their needs and preferences across sales and marketing. Now, what's the solution to this? Well, at Forrester, we've been talking about customer obsession as the key to creating real value for your customers in this more digital age. Customer obsession is a perpetual business orientation. You don't just say, we need to become more customer obsessed, go off and do a program, and then you're done with it. It really is about fundamental change to how you run the business, set your strategy, and think about how you engage with customers. It puts the customer at the center of all of your leadership, strategy, and operations. And we can see through our research that these customer obsessed organizations really do maximize the value that they give to their customers. And in turn, they get a lot of business benefit from that. Here's just a sample of some of the things that we've seen in the research that show that customer obsessed B2B firms outperform their peers. They're more likely to um, they're more likely to overperform on revenue, on profitability, retention, and employee engagement, which is essential to creating a customer obsessed organization. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is a lot of change, and business change is often hard to do. But it also requires new attention to technology change. And so Jay is going to now share with you some of the challenges technologically that companies are facing in this age of AI.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. Well, as Laura mentioned, technologies are advancing quickly, and it requires us to keep up to ensure that we can engage with customers effectively across all the various digital touchpoints. It seems that nearly every day, every week, there are incremental advancements in generative AI. Every month, there's even larger leaps. There are massive ongoing changes with new models, new context window sizes, new capabilities that are coming out literally sometimes daily. And as any technology becomes, risks making user experiences less intuitive and more frustrating. I mean, the basic interface for generative AI seems super simple on its face. It's a freeform text box to ask any question. But sometimes too much choice or something that's too open-ended can lead to paralysis or feeling lost. There's an art to good prompting, and we need to guide our customers with proper options and signposts. Customer habits and expectations evolve with technology, and businesses have to adjust to these changes to stay relevant. Our customers are also going to be experimenting with AI to varying degrees, and we have to meet them where they are. And with the advent of many different platforms for communication, it can be a challenge to manage them all effectively. We often run a constellation of apps and customer touchpoints that operate somewhat independently. But we want to maintain consistency of tone and accuracy of content. So we're often dealing with an ocean of data. And AI has the potential to help manage navigating the complexity of operating across all those various systems and channels. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tim to kind of explore some of those channels.
Good morning, all, and I'll extend my thanks as in addition to Laura's for the invite to today's seminar. At Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more. So it's always great fun to be in front of customers and share things that we're learning. And in this sphere of omni-channel engagement, where we're putting the customer at the middle, and the customer's expectation is that every person in our organization really understands who they are. So it's created a significant challenge because the way that systems have evolved over the last decade creates all these different silos across the organization. And customers have, for the last couple of years, have already been on a journey, begin to take this data that lives in these transactional systems and begin to move it into what we call data lakes, a modern analytic data store, because understanding this customer has become really grayed out. And so we need to take this data and begin to organize it in a manner where we can get modern analytics on it. And what we're seeing is people are leveraging that investment in a data lake and adding a CDP capability, a customer data platform, to begin to take this disparate data, unify it to create a complete understanding of who this customer is, so that when we engage with them, whether we're starting to attract new customers, top of the funnel, things like advertising, we can use AI models. And these things have been around for several years now, things like predicting customer lifetime value to develop our high value customer lookalike models for advertising. Or if we're trying to retain customers, we can predict things like customer churn to identify customers when they engage with us at call centers so that we can say the right things at the right moment. Or if we're trying to just re-engage with customers and transact at a different level, maybe we can use an AI model like product cross-sell and upsell. But as we've mentioned, there's been a tectonic shift, and we've moved into this era of generative AI, and it's creating yet another additional opportunity to create value and impact as we engage with our customers. So I'm going to hand back to Laura so we can focus a little bit deeper on creating digital strategies.
Great, thank you. So as we think about so as Tim was saying, there's been a tectonic shift, and there is a lot that's going on, and companies are really moving forward with AI in general and generative AI in particular. And so I wanted to share some of the data to just underline that Forrester has been seeing to show that this really is a tectonic shift. AI and automation together are really fueling a big change in B2B technology and innovation. And we think this is going to have advantages not only for business, but for customer experiences as well. In our most recent surveys, we're seeing that 63% of B2B organizations now plan to significantly increase their investment in AI. We're seeing a big uptick in conversation automation as well, particularly in B2B marketing. There's been great adoption in sales, but as you look across all the customer-facing parts of the organization, marketing is now planning to increase spending on conversation automation to really allow customers who are interacting with various marketing materials, programs, websites, to have that kind of interactive experience. And then last but not least, and I have more data on this, is generative AI. Half of the organizations that we have surveyed said that they plan to use generative AI in the next 12 months to enable more employee self-service analytics and data. That means that you'll have more opportunity internally to understand your customers better, to understand their preferences, and be able to serve them in the way that they expect. Now, looking at generative AI a little bit more closely, we really do see that the uptake on this particular type of technology has been dramatic. More than half the organizations are experimenting or already in expansion mode. In fact, 33% are there when it comes to generative AI today. In fact, 84% would characterize their readiness, especially amongst the executive ranks, at a 4 or a 5 out of 5. Now, as they start thinking about all of these things, as this experimentation moves from experimentation into production and then on into expansion, it's being driven by the belief that generative AI is really going to have broad impact. 79%, like 81 out of 4 out of 5, if you put it that way, believe that generative AI is going to have a high impact on their business during the next 2 years on how employees do their day-to-day work, how governance and regulatory mechanisms work, on the competitive environment, on the products and services they produce, and how customers interact with us. In fact, during our predictions report for 2024, we pointed out that one of our predictions is going to be that 2 out of 5 product launches brought to market in 2024 is going to be driven by generative AI, either insights or technology. Now, all of this activity means that we're going to have to get serious about use cases. And here are 8 that we're seeing as being popular for just marketing. But there's probably equal numbers for sales, for support, for customer success management. And as all of these use cases multiply, it's going to become very important to be able to understand, to be able to say, well, what are the things that we need to be able to do, right? And how do we do them the right way? And for this reason, I'm going to turn things over to Jay so that he can talk about how an aggregated data model can really help.
Great, thanks, Laura. So Tim had mentioned earlier data silos, and a common approach to address that is to try to centralize data. But rather than undertake a large, slow-moving project to centralize and organize all the data from multiple channels, let AI do the work of sifting through the noise and finding relevancy in relationships across multiple data streams. AI plays a pivotal role in synthesizing vast amounts of data and making it accessible and actionable. But we need to have an aggregated meta view of the data to feed the AI. We're looking to understand customer behavior and to derive or record customer preferences, both implicit and explicit, and identify trends in the data. Having more data in context allows us to understand customer preferences, behaviors, and it leads to more targeted and effective communication strategies. But ingesting this rich data with AI, we can predict customer trends, we can tailor offerings, we can anticipate needs, we can improve customer satisfaction and loyalty. Going further, context-rich data helps in optimizing marketing efforts and increasing overall business performance by making data-driven inferences. And as we discussed, AI can synthesize massive amounts of data for easy query by employing machine learning and natural language processing. It can identify patterns, trends, correlations within large data sets that would be nearly impossible for humans to analyze manually at scale. AI systems can understand and process natural language queries that allow us to ask questions about the data in a conversational manner. And the importance of this is that it's hugely significant. It enhances accessibility and the usability of all this data, making it easier for decision makers to gain insights and make informed decisions without needing deep technical expertise in data analysis and SQL queries. I mean, it really does remove a barrier to non-technical people having direct access to this high-quality data. As an example of some output, we could use a low-code tool like Microsoft's Copilot Studio to build an app to pull in data from multiple data sources and query all of it using a natural language interface. We can even build into the UI of the tool specialized system prompts that tailor the AI to deliver focused, useful information that from that vast sea of data that virtually any level of user could use. So now I'd like to pass it to Tim to talk kind of about the evolution of some of these systems.
Thanks again, Jay. We thought it might be helpful to understand some of the investments that Microsoft is making. Is in the news, you're hearing all kinds of news about generative AI, but there's really two bodies of work that are happening at the same time. There's work that's needed to light up models like the ones we talked about earlier, churn, product cross, sell, upsell, customer lifetime value. And then there's a whole new body of work that's needed to light up these capabilities like generative AI. And so on that first one, the concept of a customer data platform, where Microsoft came from about a decade ago, we were building CDPs from the ground up, and it was taking anywhere from 12 to 14 months just to stitch all these PaaS solutions together to create a capable, enterprise-capable customer data platform, to bring the data out of these systems, get it unified, because it was very high code. It took a very technical person writing a lot of code to clean up the data, to land it in a data lake, and to make it useful. And then you had to write a lot of queries to get segments of your customers out. And then, so our first wave of innovation was around taking that PaaS-based CDP and turning it into SaaS and making it low code and having it have AI built into it. So the kind of AI I'm talking about here at this stage was more predictability kinds of AI. So we were able to now move it away from just an IT-focused solution into the hands of marketing people who could get in and do things like create their own segments without writing any code. But the downside of it was it still required some integration. We had to take this segments that were created and integrate it with systems of activation, things like marketing systems or advertising platforms. And so there was still a bit of work that was needed from IT to help make this activation possible. And now we enter into the area where we are today, where it's SaaS CDP and it's an integrated platform. Not only do we have the ability to map, match, and merge data sets to create unified profiles, but we also have the ability in the same platform to begin to activate on that data, create automated journeys. And so this is the world of, it's very low code. It's built-in AI models, but now we've entered into this era of generative AI. The kinds of things that you're seeing at Microsoft, where you're probably hearing a lot of things about Copilot. And so there's Copilots built in everything at Microsoft, everything from Word to Excel to Outlook. One of my favorites is in Outlook, where somebody has sent emails to 10 different people, and then they finally add me to the mix. And I typically have to read through a chain of 10 emails, just a ton of time. Copilot actually reads all the text, summarizes in one block for me what everybody has said, so I don't have to read through 10 things. So that's an example of how generative AI is being built into everything that we're doing at Microsoft. So now we've got these platforms. So we've got the ability to empower the business first, where business people don't have to write code. They can log into the systems. They can see and actually use natural language to create segments of their customers, to say, I want to see all my high value customers who are likely to churn, who we haven't engaged with in the last few weeks. And you can instantly create a segment. Or you can create a complete customer journey using natural language. And what you're going to see this week released is actually taking from a marketing person, having a brief of their advertising plan, putting that brief into a marketing activation system, and it will automatically create your audiences, create your journeys, and create plans for campaign activation. And the next big wave of this is out of the box be attribution. So you've heard a lot about the need for insights, and so now we're going to make more and more of these insights to figure out, create a feedback loop to find out what's working, what's not working, so you can iterate faster and get more value. So now I'm going to hand it back to Laura as we talk about these frameworks to get value quicker.
Thank you, Tim. So, it's seeing how Tim and Jay have explained how the technology has become way more capable and easier for people who are less technical to be able to use to get their jobs done. It's time to start thinking about, well, what are those essential elements that you're going to need to be able to do this kind of engagement? And I want to go back for a second and talk about what distinguishes those customer obsessed companies, because this is what this technology will help you to become more customer obsessed and enjoy the kinds of benefits. Now, one of the things that sets customer obsessed companies apart is that there are 4 characteristics that they all share. They're customer led, of course, but they also operate quickly. They don't wait for everything to get perfect. They move ahead, and they're connected. There's a lot of collaboration that happens internally, seamlessly, but also with their ecosystem and partners. But probably the most important part, or at least the fundamental underlying, is that they are insights driven. They're always using their data in a strategic way to figure out what they should be doing. So they're thinking about customers and steering towards new opportunities that those customers are telling them that they're looking for. They're harnessing data and applying analytics at every opportunity to provide differentiated value. And they use that data to tell them when something's going on that they need to jump on and quickly accelerate to get more business impact. And on the connected side of things, they share data internally to create customer value as a collective organization. Now, does this work? Well, yes, it does. I wanted to point out some of the things that these data-driven, insight-driven companies have in terms of a competitive advantage. Again, from our data, what we're looking at is not just obsessed, but those that are insights-driven in the lighter green versus those that aren't in the darker green. You can see there's a significant advantage in employee engagement, in year-over-year growth, and in customer retention. But we can also see that these companies are more resilient. They, compared to firms that are, more at the beginner stage, those companies with advanced insights-driven capabilities are seeing benefits like being more likely to report improved ability to adapt to unforeseen circumstances, to have increased customer lifetime value, and to have improved customer experiences, which, after all, is the core to delivering value and differentiation. So strategically, you've got all this data, you've got all this great technology, it's easier to use. How do you think about using it? So from a proactive standpoint, we talk about understanding your ideal customer profile. And to do that, we found that it works best if you do it in reverse of the customer life cycle. So customers start, by discovering they have a problem and evaluating alternatives, and then becoming customers, and finally becoming advocates. And that cycle will continue through cross-sell and upsell. But to analyze what's going on here, I do a lot of work with our clients on the post-sale. And right now, the best place to start is in the post-sale by really understanding who are your best customers and how did they get that way? And then how do we use those insights to make more of our current customers look like our best customers? And then start to look at how do we translate that into new segments, into finding the right kinds of opportunities to pursue, and then building out the kinds of information that they're looking for in order to attract net new buyers. Working in the opposite direction is what's going to give you the most benefit with this, with your data analysis and your insights right away. It's also important, though, to understand that there's a lot of different tools that you may need in order to understand what's going on in that data. And the tools and reporting must encompass different elevations in order to meet the needs of your employee population and give you the right kinds of insights. Some need to be company-wide, others need to drill down into accounts. Even the individual buying group, here's an example, our individual buying group or decision maker, it can be analyzed further in really simple ways. And then, again, from my perspective, engagement is really key. What are they doing to be more effective? How are they adopting your product? And how are they winning going forward? Now, I'm going to turn it over to Jay, and he's going to give you a concrete example of how one company put all of this together.
Thanks so much, Laura. Yeah, so I would love to talk to you about this particular case study. This company is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to growing the role of communities in the protection, resettlement, and integration of refugees and forcibly displaced people, something that's certainly in the news these days. They had an issue where the incoming data volume was overwhelming, just way too much to deal with the amount of resources that they had available. And it resulted in not great customer service, a lot of generic responses that were not tailored to the original request coming in, people asking for help or very specific information and basically getting back some fairly generic responses. That leads to a suboptimal customer experience. So we're developing a generative AI-based app. It's a dynamics-based app that automatically creates a case for incoming email inquiries, but it pulls contextual data from multiple sources, from knowledge bases, from facts, from directly from the Dynamics DB, from regulations, from whatever data sources that are relevant to helping with these cases, and it starts a case history. And what it does is it generates personal, tailored responses and contextual follow-ups with the important bit, consistency and accuracy. This is a force multiplier for a customer service agent. I would like to caution here that with anything generative AI, sending anything to a customer without human review is not a good idea at this point. This technology is new. It can hallucinate. We always recommend human review, something that allows the agent to review the generated content and make any last minute changes before it goes out. That's how this works now. It actually generates a draft response automatically and attaches it to the case. It's ready for quick disposition by the agent with a click or two, or they can go in and edit it or make any changes that they see fit before it goes out to the customer. So this is, again, it's a huge force multiplier in allowing them to respond to a very high volume of incoming information and still have quality, consistent responses to the clientele that they serve. Let's go to Tim now to talk about some best practices.
I knew I was going to be the one. You heard Laura talk about working backwards, working in reverse. And thank you for the hand cue there, Laura. That's what got my attention. Working in reverse. So I'm going to double down on that theme. You also heard Jay talk about an ocean of data. And so probably the biggest problem that I've seen our customers do is they begin to embrace, they think that they have to take this waterfall approach of the data that lives everywhere, and they've got to get it all into a modern analytic data store before they begin to do anything with it. And we have a little saying at Microsoft that says, an insight is worth a dime of return on investment, but an action is worth $1. So if you just stop with the insight, you're leaving all of the business value on the table. And so this is where it really needs to be cross collaboration. If it's your IT people working in tandem with business people, because the business people aren't going to let you just end with the insight. They're going to be wanting to take an action. And so we've seen some ways to begin to help frame this up so that you don't get stuck in making that mistake. And I'm just calling this getting the right scope. Because you think about it, I've boiled it down to 3 strategic imperatives. One is you're trying to attract new customers, you're trying to transact with existing customers, or you're trying to retain customers. And so pick one, pick a strategic imperative. Don't try to think we're going to put Gen AI or AI predictability across all of these. Start to think and have conversations across your organization. Like, I want to pick one. And because when you do pick one, then you're going to identify a person, somebody in the line of business who's going to say, hey, this is the business value that we can create. And when you begin to have those conversations across the enterprise, you're going to start prioritizing these based on where the biggest value comes from. So the who is really important. And then the what. Once you've got the person, they're probably going to say, well, yeah, if we did this, and it's going to point to a very specific KPI, a key performance indicator. And so that KPI is going to start to point you to the data that is needed to drive that KPI. And then really importantly, create a story with a hypothesis. So we're going to give an example of this in just a second. So let's say, for example, I've had these conversations and it leads me toward this attract area, and I'm having conversations with my marketing team. And so in the marketing team, I've given maybe 4 or 5 different examples here of types of KPIs. It could be that we're going to improve customer acquisition costs, or maybe I want to improve conversion rate. And so throughout this conversation, we narrowed it down to high quality leads. And then if I focus on that, what's my hypothesis for improving high quality leads? And it might be something like, by knowing more about our high value customers, we can target high quality new leads, spend less because I spend less on advertising costs because I know who my high quality customers are, and I can target customers or prospects that look like those. And then as a result of getting those people to the top of the funnel that are more likely to close, you're going to close more. So in kind of in summary here, this success framework is, pick a lane, a strategic imperative, find out who that person is, pick a KPI, and then develop your hypothesis. As a result, you're going to have a much more realistic scope. You're not going to try to boil the ocean and get all this data all in the right place before you start taking action on it. You'll actually, it will help you identify the specific data sets that are going to help you drive value, because there are going to be way too many of them. And then that will drive faster time to value. People, I think we've shot ourselves in the foot at Microsoft by mentioning this concept of a 360-degree view. We've been saying it back in the CRM days, and we're saying it again now in the customer data platform days, but it's a journey to get there. It may take you a while, but if you do it one KPI at a time, and like Laura said, kind of work your way backwards, find those high value customers, then it's going to be much more valuable. Your business people are going to be much happier because they're going to start seeing business value right out of the gate. So these are our words of wisdom, and I'm going to hand back off to Alex to help us close out and open up for Q&A. Alex?
Thanks so much.
Alex,
Jay,
would you like me to take this one, or are you going to take it? Yeah, I'll take it.
To talk about our offer?
Sounds good. I'll talk about the Synoptic offer. So for anyone attending this webinar, we would like to offer a complimentary assessment exploring potential AI solutions for your company. As you can see here, what's covered in this assessment is understanding customer experience gaps and effects from rapid tech advancements, some insights into why AI serves as a solution for addressing some of those engagement challenges, learn how to implement AI strategically, and explore a successful digital engagement framework focused on data aggregation, what we talked about today, and actionable insights and use cases. And to ultimately identify opportunities for AI development with our customized Reimagine customer engagement workshop that you're attending. So what you'll get from that is a 1-hour exploration session with Synoptic experts to brainstorm ideas and assess business cases and understand AI capabilities. The output of that would be a summary of the top 3 to 5 potential areas where AI solutions would or could impact your business. With that, I believe I'll turn it over to Alex, and I think we have a poll.
Yes, we're going to be launching a poll. Please go ahead and complete that. Let us know if you are interested in receiving a complimentary discovery assessment, and we will reach out to you directly. As you are selecting your choice in this poll, then we'll move on to Q&A. I want to remind everyone that you can put your question in the Q&A section, and we will go ahead and answer some of those questions as they come in. So first question we have, and first of all, thank you for filling out that poll, and you will have an opportunity if you didn't get a chance to do that and you want to participate in that later, you still have a chance. All right, first question that we've gotten for our speakers. In what ways can businesses ensure their new AI-driven engagement solutions align with evolving customer expectations?
I can take a stab at that one. So when you're looking to align your AI engagement solutions with customer expectations, you got to focus on some strategic areas. And the goal is to create a balance between leveraging AI for things like efficiency and personalization, while still ensuring customer comfort and trust. And some ways of doing that is, emphasizing personalization and relevance. So using AI to analyze customer data and behavior and really offer personalized experiences and tailored recommendations and content that really meet what they're looking for. Keep in top of mind privacy and security. These are hugely important to people. With the increase of AI and data analytics, we've got to prioritize privacy and data security and transparently communicate how data is used when we're working with customers. So that's part of ensuring AI transparency. We also have to do things like invest in emotional intelligence. So AI solutions need to be designed to respond to how humans behave appropriately. So we can do things like sentiment analysis and stuff real time with it to understand if somebody's angry, if somebody is having a hard time or struggling. But we need to make sure the models are cognizant of the emotional intelligence to better react to how customers are reacting to us. And then, of course, we need to integrate omnichannel support. So make sure that the AI-driven engagement solutions that we've talked about are integrated across all the channels where customers are communicating with us. So those are just some of the areas that just come top of mind, like in how we need to align with evolving customer expectations.
Yeah, Jay, I can jump in here real quick with
Sure.
another thought too. It's really important to be able to understand how your customers want to engage. And we think that the real opportunity from both a marketing and sales perspective is to look at this from what are customers trying to do? Like moving beyond using data for the basic kind of demographic and firmographic segmentation to really getting into needs-based. That overlaps, that aligns on not only how far have they matured in terms of being through the customer life cycle and using your product, but where are the opportunities to take them next and to be proactive about helping to guide them through the right steps that's going to maximize the value that they get from working with you.
I'll add one little axiom that you may be hearing this a lot, but I think this really is a simple way to remember it, but it's the right message at the right time in the right channel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what customers expect. If you're going to align with what your customers want, they expect that you know them. And so they expect that you know their preferred channel. They expect that you're not going to just, if you're pitching something that's way out in left field, they're going to your credibility is going to go down. So right message, right time, right channel.
Next question. Someone was interested in knowing about the approach to privacy and related access levels to data. Jay, do you want to talk about this
I can
one?
take a stab at that. Sorry, my audio paused there for a second. Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I kind of already brought up privacy and security before. So one of the things we're cognizant of, particularly when we're dealing with corporate data privacy and security, which is on the build side, this is something that thankfully with companies like Microsoft and their Azure OpenAI initiative, that's kind of built in. So Microsoft has wrapped the access to the Microsoft Graph into using OpenAI's models on Azure. And what this means is that we actually inherit the security structure that's already in place for enterprise when we are working with that. So the AI has access, for example, if you were building an internal tool that was querying financial statements or something else, it would know that it would only grant you access to information that you already have access to via SharePoint, via email, via some other part of the Microsoft Graph. And just to clarify, the Microsoft Graph is everything that Microsoft knows about you as an individual. So that's your calendar, your email, your Teams, your chat, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, all those different pieces of information that Microsoft knows about you with the security infrastructure already laid over it. So we actually inherit that as part of building things within Azure OpenAI. That is also true for other models, for other other types of AI as well. But in this particular case, in corporate, it's a huge leg up. It is very important to understand when your data is being trained on and when it's not. In the case of, again, Azure OpenAI, it does not train on your data, explicitly does not train on your data. That is not true for public OpenAI. Like if you go to OpenAI, go to ChatGPT directly, that is not necessarily the case. Same thing with other models. So you do have to be very careful about where you put sensitive information, and also understand when you're dealing with PII. So these are some of the biases and some of the things we need to build into responses such that we are not regurgitating PII that should not be coming back out of the models. These are all definitely very important considerations.
Yeah, we think it's just really super important to strike the right balance between ensuring privacy and building trust. And if you're going to default on one way or the other, always do things that are going to increase trust. And you know, stepping on someone's privacy is certainly the opposite of that.
Thanks for saying trust. That's a very important word at Microsoft. We have an internal saying that Microsoft runs on trust. And this is something that we don't take lightly. You wouldn't believe the number of hours of required education we have as employees of Microsoft to make sure we understand how important it is to us as an organization. And it starts with even being very early adopters of things like GDPR, landmark law that sets out guidelines of how data has to be managed. So while we have access to a lot of individual PII, it's extremely important to us that the only way that data is ever used is if it is consented by the individual. So we're not using any of our customers' data to train any of our models. I mean, it's your data, it's your tenants. We don't use your data in any way, shape, or form. It's your data for use in your models. And we take your PII and your company data very, very seriously.
Thank you. All right, so we received another question. It says, how can Microsoft Copilot as an AI tool be used to enhance customer engagement in software development environments? And can it help in developing customer-centric applications more efficiently?
Well, that's a good one. And I'm not a developer. As my friends would say, I'm allergic to C#. So I'm not a developer. I used to be back in the 80s, but I think the question is, how can Copilot help? You said specifically software developers. My son is a software developer. He works at Garmin, and he's using things like Copilot every day to write code for things that is not the code that he writes every day, because he's more of a Unix guy. But if he has to write things in another language, he can use Copilot, and he tells me he's using it literally every day to write code for things. He just, as a coder, he knows the right questions to ask of Copilot. So it's really the magic of getting value out of generative AI is being an expert enough in your field to ask the right questions to get the results out that you want. That's really the key. And we're seeing it. We have a tool, Jay mentioned it earlier, it's Copilot Studio. And this is a tool that pro and semi-pro developers can use to get to improve their ability productivity as developers. Copilots are built into all of our tools, so you can use it to. One place where I did use it this week, I was writing a plan for a boot camp, and I wanted the instructions written to help our people that need to create synthetic data, and I wanted a simple Excel formula. And I knew it was choose random between, but I just wanted to give it a verbal. I wanted to give it a verbal command, and I said, write the formula out for me and give me the instructions to automatically fill in, 100,000 rows or 100,000 rows of data. And it spit out the formula perfectly for me. It gave me the step-by-step instructions on how to put the formula in there, double click on the right corner, and fill up your Excel spreadsheet. So I see many areas where it's happening, and I don't know if that answered your question. Hopefully there's a couple examples there.
I like the example a lot, Tim, and I think that it translates into a lot of different areas as well. I mean, as you were talking about how it helps developers, but they have to know the right question to ask, it brings to mind the fact that in marketing, people are really excited about using things like Copilot to help generate content and to take some content and translate it to different industries, for example. But if you don't understand what's really happening in that industry and what's important to somebody who's in healthcare versus financial services, then you're not going to ask the right question to really make that content translate to that industry. So I think there's lots that these kinds of examples offer both the power of generative AI, but also the cautionary tale about you need to know what its capabilities and limitations are. Whether that applies to developers or marketers, it applies to everyone.
That's, I'm going to just go back to that for a second. We call it co-pilot for a very specific reason. It's not the pilot, it's the co-pilot. And you've got to be an expert in your field to get the most value out of this. This is just another magnifier of someone's base skill to be able to get this additional horsepower out of the technology.
All right, thank you. All right, another question. How can companies measure the ROI of their AI investments in improving customer engagement? And what specific KPIs would you recommend? I
can go back to that spreadsheet and just to kick this off, and Jay, Laura, jump in here too.
Mm-hmm.
I think of, again, I break it down by strategic imperative, what strategy. And I gave some examples of particular KPIs, and every business is different. So it's not just cookie cutter. I'm sure when Laura's going and consulting with these companies and when Jay's reaching out, that's why they're doing these envisioning sessions, because every business is very different. But I gave those examples of KPIs for a reason, because it's a starting point to get the creative juices flowing so that you're thinking about your business. Because some things like cost of customer acquisition is pretty common. Some companies are spending a lot of money on advertising, but not every company is. So if you're wanting to get high quality leads, and that process starts with identifying who you're going to send ads to, then, for example, just the question was, how do you get ROI? Well, first off, you got to know what you're currently spending. And if you can think, well, here's what I'm currently spending and here's my process. So I'll use what we're seeing on a particular KPI called ROADS, return on ad spend. This was one of the very first places where customers began to adopt CDPs, customer data platforms, because they were using more of a shotgun approach when they were doing their advertising. They just said, oh, well, I want to take ads out to everybody in Nashville. And I want to get everybody to come to my website that lives in Nashville. Well, you're going to get everybody coming there, and then a very small percentage of those may actually want what's on your website. And then now using your first party data to understand, like Laura said, go backwards. Who are your high value customers? What's that demographic profile look like? So now if I can say, oh, well, people in Nashville for sure, but it's people in this age demographic who have this income, who have an affinity for a particular product. Now you can have your first party data with third party data. The data sets are extremely rich, and now you can target with a rifle instead of a shotgun, and you spend less money on your ads, and then you're driving the right people to your funnel, and you're getting a higher conversion rate. So when you compare that spend versus your shotgun spend, you're going to measure the two, and you're going to see, whoa, we've reduced our cost of advertising by 20, 30%. So that's one example, but there are literally hundreds.
Tim, years ago, when we first started writing about AI, that one of the reports I remember seeing is like, well, okay, so how does AI work? And is the example that they showed is almost word for word what you were sharing. They used a marketing example that showed that if you use the technology and the data to help you narrow in on who's the right audience, the return on investment over taking the shotgun approach versus the rifle approach was 6 times. And but again, as you said, everybody's different. And it's for these reasons that Forrester has been using a methodology called total economic impact for years and years. You could go to our website and look it up if you want to see it further. But what's important about total economic impact is that we look at what are you currently spending? How is that going to change? And then we also look at benefits. How are the benefits? And the way that we look at how is it going to change is we model it out over a 3-year horizon. You can pick other horizons if that's important to you, but we typically use 3 years. And then we also look for things like, if you make this investment, what future flexibility does this give you? Does it let you do things with the technology that you can't do now? And then we also take everything and give it a haircut based on risk, because risks always occur. And those are the 4 key elements that go into any modeling of, that will produce a business case that says this is the return you should expect.
And just to add on that, just as with anything, AI or otherwise, measuring ROI, we got to start with defining some clear objectives and identifying cost components. As Laura just mentioned, measuring the benefits out of that. And while it has a lot of the same quantitative and qualitative KPIs that you would have for a non-AI engagement or anything, there are some other key ones that are kind of important to look at. Cost per interaction is a big one. So evaluating some of the reductions in service costs through AI automation is a pretty key indicator, and response time as well. So the ability for AI to deal with larger amounts of information in smaller amounts of time and to address channels more rapidly is something you have to measure, something you have to keep an eye on. But otherwise, the qualitative things, measuring CSAT, measuring NPS scores, measuring customer engagement levels, those are the same whether you're using AI or not.
I have one more thing on this topic is, probably the people in most organizations that are going to think about this are going to be, maybe it's going to start, the conversations to start in the marketing department. That's been kind of the tip of the spear. But what we're seeing happening in our customers that are these customer success customers, they're thinking not just in marketing, they're thinking about marketing, sales, and service. And so while CDPs used to be something that only marketing people thought about, now everybody's thinking about it. And generative AI has really primed that pump in a big way, because we're seeing things like chatbots. The first iteration of those that came out a couple of years ago were pretty pathetic. Now, the new versions of these are pretty impressive. Conversations that are happening now with generative AI, it's a totally different ballgame. And so now service people are seeing we can actually point to our knowledge base and have a very good experience. So the KPIs that you're going to have to think about now are much broader than just marketing. You're going to have to think about sales. We're seeing examples where you can cut the time for a seller by putting predictive, like, here's the products that this customer who bought this and this, they're likely to buy that. So now we can auto generate you some content to send to that person and present it, like Jay said, don't automatically create it and send it. Present it to the seller, let them look at it so it's not hallucinating and go, yeah, that's the right one, hit the send button. So we can cut down times for sellers, for service people, as well as marketers.
And just one more on the seller side of things. Tim, exactly, that kind of example is fabulous. But the other thing it can help them do too is that in B2B, sellers are always dealing with a buying committee, and understanding who are all the people in the buying committee and what do they all care about and stuff like. Generative AI can help do that analysis for them, condense it down into sort of that buying group executive summary so that they're always on top of what's happening with all the players.
Yeah, great example.
All right, we did get some additional interest in that discovery session and asked for the QR code again. So I'm just gonna pop it up here for anyone that wanted to scan that QR code. Just to know, the link is in our published section in the Q&A. So you can also link there and you'll receive it post-webinar. Last question that we'll take will be, how can AI advocates overcome internal resistance or cultural barriers when implementing AI-driven solutions for customer engagement?
Is it okay for me to start this one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we have to eat our own dog food, as so to speak, or drink our own champagne, as some would say, at Microsoft. So we're, with all these co-pilots that are coming out, we are the guinea pigs. We're getting it. We have to use it. So we're seeing co-pilots everywhere. And when you actually begin to use it in easy use cases, like the one that I talked about earlier, like reading my email for me and telling me, summarizing the 10 communications that occurred before I have to read it, that really begins to instill, it kind of alleviates the fear, because I'm realizing, wait a minute, this is actually using data that I would have to read anyway. It's not using proprietary information. It's not scary. It's not kind of spooky. It's actually reading things for me and summarizing it. So, okay, my brain starts to get familiar with, oh, okay, this is what we're talking about with generative AI. It's not some spooky thing out here that's going to take over the world. It's actually very practical use cases. It can see that, hey, somebody sent you an email a couple of days ago that you haven't responded to. Here's a summary of it. You might want to take a look at that. And it's like, oh, wow. It's literally like having, we used to have this little icon that looked like a paper clip at Microsoft that was an assistant, which was a total joke. But now it's actually extremely helpful. These things are popping up inside of Outlook, tools that we use every day. So it's helping me not miss things. It's helping me generate responses. So when I'm using things like that, it's, wow, this is a new super tool.
It's time for Clippy to make a comeback. And
Go ahead, Jay.
I would say, honestly, overcoming internal resistance to AI, the most important thing is education. Educate and train. Really educate people on how this stuff works at a basic level, so they understand what it is and what it's not, and why Microsoft, as Tim had mentioned earlier, why they've named it Copilot. It's not a pilot; it's a Copilot. It's not meant to replace people; it's meant to assist you. As I mentioned in the case study, it's meant to be a force multiplier. And so, but that's a big piece of it. There's a lot of fear out there. Is this going to replace my job? Is this going to replace what I do? No, it's not intended to do that. It's intended to make you more efficient at what you already do and reduce the drudgery, do things like the summaries, pull bullet points out of it. I like to use this kind of round trip example that's kind of funny, but it's going to happen one day. You can go into Copilot for PowerPoint, have it help you create a beautiful PowerPoint from a few bullet points. You send it off to your customer, who then puts it into their AI and says, give me the bullet points back. And that's what they get. It's bullet points all the way down. But really, it's an extreme case. But just educating people on what this technology actually is and what it isn't goes a long way to overcoming internal resistance. And then educating people, again, it's kind of opaque on how to use it in some ways, because it's a lot of our first exposure to it is a free-form text box, and people don't know what to ask. You can be in a meeting like this and say, hey, somebody give me a question about something. Dead silence. Nobody can think of, what do I actually want to ask? I can ask anything. No, you got to give them a little bit more guidance than that.
And just the last thought on this is that, yes, totally education, but part of education is promotion, and thinking about ways that we can internally promote the successes that we're having using generative AI. Just for example, Tim's example, I'm just going to go share with a bunch of people right now. I just know I am, because it's just so easy and so compelling. And so sharing internally, hey, these are the ways that we're using it, and these are the successes that I've had, by doing it this way, can go a long way to showing people that it's possible and encouraging them to do it, as opposed to just, it's the carrot versus the kind of the stick of, hey, you got to do the education and we're doing it and everybody needs to do it. Is show them that there's benefit from doing it.
Thank you so much. And thank everyone for joining us today in our session on Reimagine Customer Engagement in the Age of AI. I hope you found the information shared valuable and insightful. If you would like to continue the conversation and are interested in taking advantage of the complimentary 60-minute discovery assessment, you still have the opportunity to do so by completing a form, and we'll connect with you directly. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, be sure to keep an eye out on your inbox for a follow-up email with resources related to this webinar. Until next time, take care and have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.